Well, we've talked about this a little bit in an earlier time with you. You talked about they had martinis and this and that.
Yeah.
It's sometimes on the mission field, wouldn't you agree, that it gets a little messy? And in terms of our theological fences that we put around what's possible, and sometimes, like for instance, they were living together. Well, how can they come to know the Lord when they're still living together? And all the different things that it's really not that much different than it was with the Pharisees in Jesus' time. Jesus was trying to break through and said the goal is to get people to the Father through the Son. And if we have to go through some of the messes to get there, lead them to Jesus, and then Jesus will take care of their insides over time. Would you agree with that?
I agree. And I think, if you don't mind, culturally, I travel to a lot of cultures. I think the American culture has struck a narrative where religion is bad. And Christians can be bad. And they're kind of, not crazy, but they're a little extreme. And I think a lot of these things feed into it. You can't drink, you can't smoke, and all those things. And I think that's an American thing, to tell you the truth. Because when we're in the Philippines and other countries, we don't have to deal with so much of these legalistic things. But in America, we've kind of divided the ground between a lot of denominations and religions. And so everybody has their characteristic that they think makes you holier or better. And it's only Christ. It's only Christ that changes people. So like us on Friday night, we have people from all kinds of backgrounds from around the world that come on Friday night with their wives. We have never mentioned a denomination or a religion, period, on a Friday night in 13 years. We have mentioned Jesus.
Yes.
And there's a common denominator in Jesus that everybody loves and can understand. And as long as we talk about him, his teachings, how can he change us? We have not had an argument in there about people that are from far different doctrinal backgrounds who actually become stronger in their faith because they are drawn to Jesus like a moth to the flame, rather than to... You have to do, like one time one of the guys came up to me and said, Tom, we need to pass a plate. I go, pass a plate? What do you mean pass a plate? He said, at our church, you got to have an offering. You got all these people in there. Because to him, part of church was an offering. I go, we're never going to pass a plate. I never talk about money.
Yeah.
Now, I guess some people can, but when I'm dealing with a lot of the guys that are millionaires, where people are always after them about their money, or they're trying to make money.
Exactly.
It's all about money. I said, I don't ever mention money. That's for somebody else's business. And somebody else can talk to them about that. But in here, we're not passing a plate. So you know what we did one time? I finally passed a plate to make that guy happy. I put $3,000 worth of $50 bills in it. 60 $50 bills in it. And I said, everybody take one $50 bill. And they all went, what? I said, we wanted to pass the plate, take a 50. But I want you to take one of my 50s. And I said, I want you to go around, and in the next 6 months, I want you to find somebody that God leads you to give that $50 to and not be ashamed to give it to him. Because you guys need to touch the regular guy too, not just write a check to a charity, but learn that there can be a autonomous thing in your life where God just blesses you, and I want you to deal with this guy. And one of our guys comes back the next week. Tom, I found somebody to give my $50 to. It was fantastic. And he told the story, and everybody goes, hey, I got my story too.
Do that.
And one guy calls me. He said, on the phone, Tom, I got a question. I said, sure. Now this guy's he's how everybody has they're either generous or a little bit thin with their money. He's got crocodile arms as far as getting in his pockets. And he calls me, even though he's a wealthy golfer, he says, Tom, I think I found one. I said, what? He said, I'm in line at the grocery store. The lady in front of me's got 4 kids, under 5. She's got all these groceries, food stamps, coupons, and she's short $50 on her bill. And she's standing here. Should I give her my 50? I said, how much is she short? He said, actually, it's $49. I said, well, give her the 50 and don't ask for the dollar change. And he did. And he said, it was just so freeing for him and he gave it to me. He said, this is from the Lord. That's all I can tell you. And then he headed out and he said, I felt terrific. So a lot of it is just learning that our Christianity isn't something in a box that we do in a denomination, go to a church and act like this. It's a spontaneous day-by-day relationship with God where he leads us to do things that are wonderful.
Yes. I tell you what, it's, as we hear these stories, and one of the things I want to be communicated through Tom is that people oftentimes will see Tom or see a life as somebody who's doing extraordinary things and say, look at what they're doing, without really making the connection between Tom and then who I am, and that this could be a life that I access by faith and a willingness to make myself available where I could have these kinds of stories just like Tom has. Yeah. There's always a tendency to put these, holy guys and the guys in the know or the ministry guys and all that up here. and that we're just down here as passive recipients of a Bible study or something. And I think one of the things that certainly burns in me, and I know burns in Tom, is to release what has been given to you that you might steward it well. I mean, you're going to stand before the Lord one day, as Tom will, and as I will, and give an account for the life you lived in the flesh and what you've been given. And by the way, this is not some horrible wet blanket that God puts on your life that if you don't live up to this standard, you're going to fail or you're going to be judged. It's a privilege. I don't want a different lifestyle than I have.
Yeah.
I want a supernatural, God-directed, full of miracles life where I don't ever have to worry about some new atheist coming in or some new archaeological discovery that comes up with some new thing that disproves an Old Testament thing. It's just absurd, because now I have the subjective reality of living a life where God directs it, where there's no way I could succeed unless God shows
Amen.
up.
That's great stuff.
Don't you say? I mean,
I agree completely, and I just think a lot of people think you have to be trained or be a professional religious person to share Christ or to minister, and you do not. All you have to do is love people. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. I think the pastors and ministers in our country should be training us so people like us, lay people, basketball players or golfers or country club members, can love another person and somehow show Christ to them by just loving them first. And then when the opportunity to speak comes, be willing to do it without shame. And to help another person's life be changed for the better, we should all want to do that, period. And there's nothing that changes a person more than Christ.
Absolutely. You know, Romans 12 says we become a living sacrifice. And it is an inconvenience lifestyle, but the paradox is that the lifestyle that we have now, that we protect so ferociously, our time and our abilities and things, is actually not, I don't see that people that satisfied. When they do try to protect their time and their money and hold it in, they actually don't have vibrant, relationally driven lives.
Yeah.
And I think if they can give that, would you agree, if they can give that as a living sacrifice, it looks sacrificial from the outside looking in, but living the life changes everything.
For me and my wife, Karen, I think we can give one example where we saw there was going to be a sacrifice. And I was in the Philippines many years ago, and I saw an orphanage. I went to speak at it, and I realized how bad it was in condition. And I realized that politically and government-wise, government doesn't do a good job of doing this. Christians do a great job, or a Christian organization that centers on that does a good job. And I just felt awful for these kids. So I don't know what I was thinking about. I impulsively thought, I'm going to start my own orphanage. And I still to this day don't know what I was thinking. I didn't even ask Karen. And so I prayed about it, and there were two Filipino Christians that I knew really well, and I said, would you help me with this? They said, we'll help you start an orphanage. I said, how did you know I was going to start an orphanage? And they said, we've been praying about it, and we can see your desire, and if you're going to do that, we're going to do it. I said, well, that's amazing. They said, how do we start? I said, let's just get some kids and love them, but we'll need some land. They said, no, we don't need any land. We're poor Filipinos, but the land we live on is ours. You can have that. And from that, we developed the orphanage. And on the same day, now get this, on the same day, this is when email just started. I didn't even know anything about it. My wife sends me an email from the States to a friend. First communication we've had by email, she says, you're not going to believe this. A friend of yours, who you led to Christ years ago, decided he wants to do something for kids with you in the Philippines. Even though you do basketball, find some kids you can invest in, she said. She didn't even know I'd made the decision to do this, and neither did he.
Coincidence?
Coincidence. And he gave, immediately, just to show he meant something, he gave $10,000 and said, go do something with it. Well, I took that and these two and my desire, and I said, that makes sense to me. Now, I knew it was going to be a sacrifice of some kind. I didn't know over 20 years the sacrifice it was going to be, because we now have adopted 52 kids. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't turn a kid back or any of the experiences. I'm going, how much joy, and I have fun doing it. Please don't make you feel like it's a tough thing. It's a blessed thing. But you have to make the initial responses, I'll try a sacrifice for these kids or for this. And then the reward that God gives you when you serve Him and you're willing to take a risk or sacrifice for Him, You cannot feel it and believe it till you see it yourself and try it yourself.
Isn't that what the Lord said? Taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yes.
Taste, and you've got to taste the life. You've got to taste the relational life where God calls you into do something that maybe is a little out of your comfort zone. And it's not some pastor or priest telling you to do this. This is the Spirit of God moving on you and you then making a decision. So my encouragement to you, as Tom and I continue to encourage one another, and that's what the Bible says, come together and encourage one another as long as it's called to today. So you won't be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. In other words, hardened by the normal course of this world, which says, no, take everything, bring it into yourself, don't reach out, protect, the economy's bad, everything's bad, don't hoard it and do all that. Forget it. That will not lead to abundant life. So our encouragement to you today is to take whatever step that is. If it's a small step, maybe just to share one bit of Jesus, or maybe just to make your faith visible for the first time. Whatever it is, just take that little step, and then if you're faithful with that, He'll give you a little bit more. And if you're faithful with that, He'll give you a little bit more. And who knows? One day you could stand in heaven and there may be thousands of people standing behind you saying, I am in the kingdom because of that particular person. You say it all started with just making a small decision to follow what was in front of me. So, hey, thanks for being with us today. Tom, thank you, brother. We love you, man. And be praying for Tom. Be praying for the senior tour. Be praying for that, not only the men and on the tour, but their influence that they have on out into the community to expand the glorious kingdom of Jesus and to make Him famous. It's been great being with you, and have a great day.
Thank you.